Hey guys, welcome to Hemlock Ridge. Glad you can make it back today. Today we're going to talk about ponds and how you can take care of your off-grid pond to make it enjoyable and as clean as possible. Now this pond, when I got it, it was so overgrown you couldn't even see the water. It was really unhealthy, and I'm in the process of trying to clean it up. It has been a process, and today I'm going to show you a few of the things I've learned about that you can use on your property as well too, to make your pond a little bit more enjoyable and make the water a little bit more clear. If you haven't already, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like this video. If you want to ask me a question, leave a comment, and as long as you guys keep liking the videos, I'll keep making them, so really appreciate that. I've also had a request for some merch, so now if you go to the YouTube channel, you can click on the store and get some Hemlock Ridge merch as well too. So this pond, I don't know the history of it. It's been here for a long time. When I got the property, it was so overgrown. Again, you couldn't even really see it. There was just all kinds of weeds and things floating in it and so forth. It's still a work in progress. It still can get a lot cleaner. But one of the things I've been trying to do is to clear around the pond a little bit. This is not ideal, this pond, because there are trees and vegetation all around it. And all of that organic matter drops into the pond. It falls to the bottom of the pond, and it almost becomes like a big compost pile. And because the pond isn't aerated, all of that organic matter lays on the bottom of the pond almost like a big mulch pile, and it releases all kinds of nutrients into the pond. It kind of rots, and that's how you get algae floating to the surface. Ideally, if you have a pond where you have power nearby and you can run aeration, it will actually take the pond, it will turn over the layers so that the warm water on the top mixes with the cool water on the bottom. That allows oxygen to get into the water, allows that organic material to break down. The other thing though is if you have a pond without any trees around it, that's ideal. I'm trying to clear some of this away because if there's less leaves every fall falling into the pond and twigs and buds and pollen and everything else going into the pond, less of that is going to mean cleaner water, less algae growth, less nutrients going into the pond as well too. So what I've done today is I've actually gotten some grass carp, and these grass carp will eat pondweed, duckweed, milfoil, lots of soft vegetation in the pond. I've started to get a bit of vegetation. You can see the grass beds starting to grow up now, and they will start to cover the pond here in just a few weeks. And so these grass carp are going to eat that vegetation and keep it down so that it keeps a much healthier ecosystem in the pond. Now, you can't just go to the store and buy these. I had to go to my local conservation department. I had to get a permit. They look at the size of the pond, the depth of the pond, what types of weeds are in the pond, satellite images, and then they give you a permit to buy these fish. And one of the reasons they do that is because these fish are actually sterile, so they cannot reproduce. You have to buy them from an authorized dealer, because if these fish were not, they would get into the water system and they would actually overpopulate. So I've gotten a permit for 12 of the grass carp. They are going to sit in the water for a little bit to acclimate. Going to give them about 30-40 minutes to acclimate. And then let's go ahead and release them into the pond and see how they do. So the other thing you can do with your pond is add pond dye. Pond dye is very good because it's non-toxic. It actually shades the water. It stops the sunlight from penetrating as deep and basically feeding the algae that's inside the pond so you don't get an algae bloom. Better than using chemicals. It isn't cheap, unfortunately, but neither are chemicals. This is not bad for the environment, which is good. And again, it's going to help shade that pond a little bit so that you have less of an algae bloom and less overgrowth. I don't have any particular brand of pond dye that I use. I mean, I use whatever's on sale, candidly. I haven't found one that seems to work better than the others. I've tried different colors. I've tried sea green, I've tried dark blue, I've tried black, which is kind of nice because it makes the water a little bit more reflective and looks like a natural pond. But today I have some blue that was on sale, so I'm going to go ahead and try that. And I like to go ahead and put it in right from the boat because you can get it dispersed better throughout the pond. So let's go ahead and head out there and we'll take care of it. Okay, so I've got a helper with me here, and always use a glove with this. If this stuff gets on you, it will not come off. I mean, it is food grade dye, but it is really, really blue. And I actually put some of this in already this season. So you want to start to dye your pond the first time it thaws. So once the ice is gone, you can start to put some dye in it. The sooner the better, because it's going to break down the photosynthesis and it's going to block the UV that's going to grow all of the algae in here. So I put this in April. It is now late May. It's about, about 2 months this will last. And we'll go ahead and disperse this here out in the pond. Now, what you don't want to do is spill it all over the container like I just did, because then it gets in your boat. And you'll see there's a lot of organic material on the pond right now. A lot of it is pollen and tree stuff because the trees are all popping right now. But there is some filamentous algae right now, which is the algae that kind of grows on the bottom of the pond, and then it comes up and floats in mats on the top, and that's kind of gross. That's the pond scum that you often hear about. The supply store where I get my pond supplies from did tell me that there is something called phosphate binders that you can use in the pond, and it will help bind the phosphate so some of the algae and other things won't grow off of it. And so I might try that in the future as well too. Okay, so the dyes had a chance to dissipate. You'll see the pond has a very blue color now because I used a blue dye. But again, that's going to help block some of the UV, slow down some of the photosynthesis, hopefully slow down some of the algal growth in the pond. It's almost like shading it, so the pond's just not out here baking in the sun, warming up, and spewing all of this algae to the surface. So it looks a little bit better. The grass carp are going to take a while. The first season, I don't expect to see a lot. By next year, I'm told the pond will be a lot cleaner, less weeds. Most of those weeds right now, the weed beds are underneath the surface of the water. In a couple weeks, they're going to be coming up and creating a mat on the top of the pond, and the grass carp are going to help with that next year. So remember 3 things that you want to be able to do: shade the pond, use some kind of food dye or pond dye. Secondly, try to keep any organic material from falling into the pond, because that's just going to create more decomposition. It's going to create more nutrients that are going to create more algal blooms. And the third thing, if you do have power on your property, go ahead and aerate that pond. It's going to go mix up, stratify the layers, or break up the stratus layers so that the pond mixes and you don't have just cold, oxygen depleted water on the bottom and oxygen rich bottom at the top. And then when the aeration mixes that up, it'll help anything in the pond. Basically, the anaerobic process will help it to decompose without creating a bunch of algal waste in the waters. I don't have any power here, not going to be able to aerate it, so I'm going to do the best I can with the pond dye and with also the grass carp. And possibly next year I'll go ahead and try some of the phosphate binders as well too if I'm having a problem. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Hemlock Ridge. As always, thanks for coming along. If you like it, please hit subscribe, and I'll be making more videos. And until next time, we'll see you back here on Hemlock Ridge.